The water came up fast. Not the kind of flood you see on the news, where cameras pan over streets turned into rivers and reporters in rain jackets stand knee-deep outside people's houses. This was quieter than that. Meaner. The kind that creeps under the door at 3 a.m. while you're still asleep. That's what Rowan Alcott found when she pulled over on County Road 9, just south of Otter Lake, Manitoba. A station wagon tilted sideways in the ditch, front wheels submerged, water still rising. A woman's hand pressed flat against the driver's window, not waving, pushing, like she was trying to hold the glass in place by sheer will. Rowan didn't think, she just moved. But to understand why that choice cost her nothing, and changed everything, you have to understand what Rowan Alcott's life looked like before that moment, before the flood, before the woman in the car, before the name that would turn her world inside out. Rowan Alcott, 26, mixed Cree, Tea and Métis, worked the early shift at the Otter Lake Feed and Fuel off Highway 68. 5'4", slight, with dark braided hair she always tucked under a green toque regardless of the season. She had the kind of face people looked past. Not plain, just unremarkable to anyone who wasn't paying attention. She wore the same oversized canvas jacket most days, faded khaki, 2 sizes too big, bought at the Sally Ann in Brandon. The left cuff was fraying. She'd sewn it back twice with green thread because she didn't have black. She lived in a one-room suite above the feed store, 12 feet by 18, a hot plate, a bar fridge, a futon that folded out at night. Her landlord, a heavy-set man named Douglas Spear, collected the $420 in cash on the first of every month and never once looked her in the eye when he did it. The suite had one window. It faced the parking lot. On clear nights, she could see Orion from where she lay on the futon through the bottom corner of the glass where the frost didn't collect. That was the view. That was the whole view. Rowan had been in Otter Lake for 2 years. She'd come up from Winnipeg after her grandmother, Kokum Pearl, had a stroke and needed someone to stay close. Kokum Pearl lived in a small bungalow 3 kilometers east, along the gravel road that ran parallel to the drainage canal. Rowan drove her to dialysis twice a week in a borrowed Civic, picked up her prescriptions at the pharmacy in Dauphin, 40 minutes each way, on days off. Her mother had died when Rowan was 9. Her father was somewhere in northern Saskatchewan. She had a half-brother in Thunder Bay who texted once a year, usually around Christmas, usually the wrong date. So it was the 2 of them. Rowan and Kokum Pearl. Same arrangement it had always been, just in a different province now. Rowan's job paid $16.75 an hour. Cash tips from the gas counter when truckers bought coffee and felt generous. She worked 6 days a week when she could get the shifts. Her manager, a lean man named Terry Golt, who wore a bolo tie indoors and smelled of cigarettes and hand sanitizer, had told her twice that she wasn't front-of-house material and kept her on the back cash register where the lottery kiosk blocked the sight line from the door. She didn't complain. She needed the shifts. In the break room, there was a pegboard where Terry posted the schedule. Every Friday, Rowan photographed it on her phone before anyone else could claim overtime. She counted hours the way some people counted calories. Precisely, defensively, because there was always a reason something might disappear. What Terry didn't know, what nobody at the Feed and Fuel knew, was that on Rowan's breaks, she sat in the supply closet with her phone propped against a case of motor oil and worked through engineering coursework. Second year, online, University of Manitoba, civil and environmental, water systems, flood modeling, soil saturation. She was 2 semesters from her degree. She'd been 2 semesters from her degree for 14 months, because every time the financial aid cleared, something else broke. Kokum's furnace, the Civic's transmission, 3 months where the dialysis center changed its transport schedule and Rowan had to cover the gap herself. She had a folder on her phone called May. That's when she planned to finish. May. This May. She'd written it on a post-it note and stuck it to the inside cover of her course binder. Just the word. No explanation needed. Every evening, same routine. Finish shift at 7. Drive to Kokum's, make dinner, usually bannock and whatever was on sale, sometimes soup if there were bones from the butcher. sit together at the small kitchen table. The one with the wobbly leg Kokum refused to let her fix because that table has character, Rowan. Don't touch it. Watch the news. Sometimes just sit. Kokum Pearl didn't need much talking. She had the kind of stillness that said everything. Then Rowan drove back along County Road 9, parked the Civic behind the feed store, climbed the outside stairs, and did 2 hours of coursework on the futon with the hot plate going for warmth. In the morning, she did it again. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was building course by course with whatever she had, and on the night of October 3rd, that building was about to matter in a way she never expected. It had been raining for 4 days straight. The kind of rain that made the ditches swell and the fields go dark and the highway spray up in sheets behind every passing semi. The drainage canal east of Otter Lake was running higher than Rowan had ever seen it. She'd noticed it Tuesday. By Thursday evening, it was a different thing entirely. Moving, muscular, the color of concrete. She'd mentioned it to Terry that morning. The canal's going to crest by tomorrow if this keeps up. Terry had looked at her over his bolo tie and said, "That's not really our department, is it?" She'd driven Kokum to dialysis that afternoon, waited in the parking lot for 2.5 hours reading her coursework on her phone, driven her home, made dinner. Leftover stew, thick with turnip. They ate slow. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. Rowan left Kokum's at 9:15. It was dark. The gravel road was soft and pocked with standing water. She turned onto County Road 9 and immediately downshifted. The visibility was bad. Headlights catching rain at an angle, the white line on the shoulder intermittent, the ditches invisible. She almost didn't see the wagon. It was a dark blue Volvo, older model, sitting at a 40-degree angle with its front end dipped into the ditch. No hazard lights. The water in the ditch was up past the wheel wells. It was still rising. Rowan stopped the Civic 20 meters back, left the headlights on, got out. The rain hit her like a wall. She ran to the car. Inside, she could see a woman. Older, white hair, glasses fogged. She was upright, seatbelt still on, both hands braced against the wheel. The ditch water was pushing against the door. She was not going to be able to open it from the inside. Rowan grabbed the door handle, pulled. The water pressure held it. She planted her feet in the mud of the shoulder, got lower, pulled again. The door gave 3 inches, then stopped. She wedged herself sideways, used her full weight, pulled until something in her shoulder went hot and wrong. The door swung. The woman gasped, "I can't, my foot is caught. The pedal, don't move." "Tell me where." "The brake pedal. My boot heel is hooked underneath." Rowan leaned in. The water was cold. Her whole forearm went under. She found the boot, found the heel, found the pedal. She worked the hook free. It took 45 seconds. It felt longer. "Okay, I've got you. Can you swing your legs toward me?" The woman could. Slowly. She was shaking badly. Rowan pulled her to the edge of the seat, got an arm around her, eased her out. The woman was not small. Rowan was. But she didn't put her down until they were back at the Civic, past the shoulder on solid ground. The woman gripped Rowan's arm with both hands, breath ragged, eyes sharp behind the fogged glasses. "You're all right," Rowan said. "You're out. You're okay." "My phone," the woman said. "It was on the seat. It's gone. The water's still rising." Rowan looked at the Volvo. The front end was deeper now. "We need to move." She put the woman in the passenger seat, turned the heat up. Found a blanket from the back, the one she kept for Kokum when the dialysis waiting room ran cold. She put it over the woman's lap. "What's your name?" Rowan asked. The woman looked at her steadily. Even now, even soaked and shaking, there was a composure to her, the kind that isn't performed, the kind that's been there so long it's structural. "Harriet Beauclair Wren," she said. "And yours?" "Rowan, Rowan." She repeated it the same way, like she was putting it somewhere specific. "Is there a hospital?" "Dauphin. 40 minutes. Are you hurt?" "My hip. From the impact. I don't think it's broken. I've had broken before. This is different. I'll drive slow." "Drive at whatever speed gets us there." Rowan drove. The Dauphin Regional Health Center was lit up in the rain like a lighthouse. Rowan pulled up to emergency, got a nurse before she'd even turned off the engine. They came out with a wheelchair. Harriet Beauclair Wren, 71 years old, was taken through the doors with quiet efficiency. A nurse came back to Rowan as she stood in the waiting room, still damp, the left shoulder of her canvas jacket dark with canal water. "Are you family?" "No. I found her on County Road 9. The nurse looked at her, at the wet jacket, the fraying cuff, the mud on her boots. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine. There's coffee down the hall, machine coffee, but it's hot." Rowan found it. Stood at the machine for a moment before she pressed the button. Her hands were steadier than she expected. She sat in a plastic chair in the hallway and opened her coursework. Flood modeling, Unit 7. She stared at the equations for a while without reading them. Outside, the rain was still coming down. An hour and 20 minutes later, a man came through the main doors. Tall, early 50s, dressed like he'd thrown on whatever was closest, dark fleece, jeans, boots that cost more than Rowan's monthly rent. He moved fast, spoke to the desk, disappeared through the double doors. Rowan didn't think much of it. 15 minutes after that, a second man, then a third, then a woman in her 40s who sat across from Rowan and typed on her phone without looking up. Rowan kept reading. At some point, a doctor came to the woman across from her, and they spoke quietly. The woman typed something, nodded. Then the doctor turned to Rowan. "You brought in Harriet Beauclair Wren?" "Yes, she's asking for you." The room was small and institutional, the way hospital rooms always are, but Harriet Beauclair Wren had managed to fill it with presence. She was propped up against two pillows, glasses back on her face, hip-wrapped and elevated, an IV line in her left arm. Her white hair was still damp. The man in the fleece was standing near the window. He looked at Rowan when she entered. His expression was difficult to read. Harriet turned to her. "There you are." Like Rowan had been away too long. "How are you feeling?" "Substantially better than I was in the ditch, thank you." She gestured to the man by the window. "My son, Fletcher, not Beauclair Wren, just Fletcher, the way you use a name when the last name is assumed." The man, Fletcher, nodded. "Thank you," he said, "for what you did." Rowan nodded back. Harriet was watching her, that same structural composure. "Rowan, you're local, feed and fuel off Highway 68. You live here, in Otter Lake?" 2 years. Harriet was quiet for a moment. "What were you doing on County Road 9 at that hour in this weather?" "Coming home from my grandmother's. She lives along that road, 3 kilometers east." Harriet looked at the ceiling briefly, then back at Rowan. "I was coming from a property assessment. I should have left by 4 o'clock. I didn't." A pause. "That was my mistake, and it appears it became yours. It's not a mistake that I pulled over." Harriet looked at her steadily. "No," she said. "I don't suppose it is." There was something Harriet wasn't saying. Rowan could feel it in the room, the way you feel a current before you see the water moving. "I'd like to ask you something," Harriet said, "and I'd like you to answer honestly." "All right. What do you do?" "Not the feed store. What do you do?" Rowan held the question for a second. "I'm finishing an engineering degree, civil and environmental, University of Manitoba, online." Fletcher's head turned slightly. "Almost finished?" Harriet asked. 2 semesters, give or take. Give or take what? Money, time. When things come up." Harriet looked at her son. He was looking at Rowan differently now, not unkind, recalibrating. "Get some rest," Rowan said. "I'll leave you with your family, Rowan." Harriet's voice caught her at the door. She turned. "What is your grandmother's name?" The question was unexpected. "Pearl Alcott. Kokum Pearl." Harriet repeated it softly. "Kokum Pearl," she nodded once. "Good night, Rowan. I'll be in touch." Rowan drove home on the highway instead of County Road 9. The drainage canal would be something else by now. She didn't sleep much. She opened her coursework at 1 a.m. and worked until 3. She told herself the night was over. She was wrong. Harriet Beauclair Wren was not a name that showed up easily if you didn't know where to look. She wasn't on social media. She didn't give interviews. The photo that came up in the first search result was 8 years old, from a board of directors announcement in the Globe and Mail business section. 3 sentences, no byline. But if you searched BWR Infrastructure Group, you found something different. one of the largest privately held civil engineering and water management firms in Western Canada. Projects spanning Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and northern British Columbia. Flood mitigation systems, municipal water treatment infrastructure, emergency drainage planning for 11 of the province's largest agricultural regions. Founded in 1989 by Harriet Beauclair Wren. Still run by Harriet Beauclair Wren. The property assessment she'd been driving back from that night, the reason she was on County Road 9 in a rainstorm at 9 p.m., was a site survey for a proposed flood management system for the Otter Lake drainage basin. The same canal Rowan had watched go dark and muscular for 4 days. The one she'd told Terry about that morning and he'd said wasn't their department. Rowan didn't know any of this yet. She found out the same way Harriet's own staff found out things. From the woman's assistant, a composed and efficient person named Vera Kalb, who called Rowan's cell phone 6 days after the accident. Wednesday morning, 8:47 a.m., Rowan was on the back cash register. Terry was doing inventory in the front. "Mrs. Alcott? My name is Vera Kalb. I work for Harriet Beauclair Wren. She's asked me to arrange a meeting at your convenience, or as close to it as scheduling allows." Rowan stepped into the supply closet. "Is she all right? Recovering well?" "Yes. The hip is healing. She's working from home." A pause. "She's always working from home. The meeting is at her request. She'd prefer to come to you, if that suits. Come to me where?" "Wherever you prefer. She said your grandmother's house, if that's comfortable, or a location of your choosing." Rowan looked at the motor oil she'd propped her against 100 times. "My grandmother's house is fine." Kokum Pearl took the news with characteristic economy. "What kind of woman?" "Older. White. Runs an engineering company." Kum poured 2 cups of tea, set them on the table with the wobbly leg. "Does she eat?" "I can ask. Harriet Beauclair Wren arrived the following Saturday in a modest gray sedan, her son Fletcher driving. She walked with a cane now, temporary, she said, but she moved carefully, the way people do when they're respecting an injury, without letting it slow them down more than strictly necessary. She sat at Kokum Pearl's kitchen table and she ate. 2 pieces of bannock, a bowl of soup. She said it was the best soup she'd had in longer than she could calculate. Kokum Pearl watched her from across the table and said nothing, which was how Kokum Pearl gave her approval. Rowan sat beside her grandmother. Fletcher sat beside his mother. The 4 of them ate, and the kitchen was quiet except for the sound of rain, lighter now, just ordinary rain. When the dishes were cleared, Harriet folded her hands on the table and looked at Rowan. "I've had my team do some research," she said. "Not into you specifically. I want to be clear about that. Into the drainage system you observed. County Road 9 and the canal east of it." Rowan waited. "You were right, by the way. It crested the following morning. 3 farms flooded, a section of road washed out. Nothing catastrophic, fortunately. But it will be if nothing changes." Rowan had already read that in the local paper. She'd read the engineering report posted on the municipality's website, annotated it in a separate document she'd saved on her phone. "I've been working on a proposal," Harriet continued. "BWR Infrastructure is designing a flood mitigation corridor for this region. Municipal contract, partially provincial. It's a substantial project." She paused. "Do you know what flood mitigation corridors involve? Channel rerouting, retention basin design, culvert capacity upgrades, vegetation management along waterways, sometimes controlled drawal valves depending on the soil type. In this region, the freeze-thaw cycle adds a layer of complexity because frost heave affects any rigid infrastructure." Harriet was very still for a moment. Fletcher looked at his coffee cup. "Where did you read that?" Harriet asked. "I didn't read it. I wrote a module summary on it last month. Unit 9, Flood Modeling. It's part of my coursework." Kokum Pearl said nothing, but she refilled Harriet's tea. Harriet looked at Rowan the way Rowan had felt herself looked at in that hospital room. Structural assessment, not unkind. "Exact. I'd like to offer you a position," Harriet said. "Not charity, not a gesture. A real position, on the Otter Lake Corridor project as a junior technical consultant on the environmental assessment team. You would work alongside licensed engineers. You would be paid a professional rate, and BWR would fund the completion of your degree, including any outstanding tuition, with no conditions attached beyond finishing. The kitchen was very quiet. "I'm 2 semesters away," Rowan said. Her voice came out even, which surprised her. "I've had to defer twice. I know. Vera pulled your enrollment record. I hope that's not an intrusion. It's fine. The position would begin when you're ready. Your schedule, including your grandmother's appointments, would be accommodated." Harriet looked at Kokum Pearl briefly, then back at Rowan. "BWR has a healthcare benefits plan. It covers dependents. Something happened in the room then." Kokum Pearl turned her face slightly away. Her hand on the table pressed flat. Rowan saw it. She looked down at her tea. "Why?" she said finally. Harriet seemed to expect the question. "Because in 35 years of running this company, I have never once had a person pull over in a flood, in the dark, and get my door open. Not because others wouldn't have wanted to, because most people don't know how to assess a situation and move at the same time. You did." She paused. "And because you told me about a drainage system that no one else in this town felt was their department." Rowan was quiet. "And," Harriet said, "because I opened your course binder by accident when Fletcher was collecting my things from the car the next morning. He found it on the seat." Rowan looked up. The canal modeling sketch. In the margin of Unit 7. She had drawn it Tuesday night. The drainage basin, the canal, the road grade, the saturation levels from the previous rain cycle. Just to see if the numbers matched what she was seeing on County Road 9 each day. They had matched. Almost exactly. "You're modeling a system you see from a car window," Harriet said, "with a pen, in a coursework binder, without a salary or a title or a research grant." She set both hands flat on the table. "I'm not giving you something you didn't already build. I'm just opening a wider door." Kokum Pearl turned back. Her eyes were dry, but just barely. Rowan said, "I'll need to stay close to my grandmother. The dialysis schedule is twice a week, for Dauphin Regional. I know. We'll arrange transport through BWR's fleet if the Civic is unavailable." Harriet picked up her tea. "Is there anything else?" Rowan thought about the post-it note inside her course binder. Just the word. "May." "No," she said. "I think that's everything." What happened after that was not a single dramatic moment. It was smaller than that, and bigger. The BWR crew arrived in Otter Lake 3 weeks later. White pickup trucks with the company logo, a compass overlaid on a wave, parked outside the municipality office. Engineers in high-vis vests walked County Road 9 with clipboards. They stopped at the section of canal east of Kokum Pearl's house. They took measurements. They marked stakes. Rowan walked with them, not as a resident watching, as a member of the team. High-vis vest, clipboard. The lead engineer, a compact, serious man named Durag Somers, asked her questions, real questions, about freeze depth, about soil saturation patterns, about the culvert grade she'd been watching for 2 years. She answered them. He listened. He went back to Harriet that evening and said, "The local hire knows this land better than we do after one site visit." Harriet wasn't surprised. At the Feed and Fuel, Terry Galt noticed Rowan had given her notice to work reduced hours. He told her she was making a mistake. That contract work dried up, that she was lucky to have steady shifts. She thanked him for the shifts. She meant it. Douglas Spear raised the rent on the suite above the feed store by $60. Rowan moved into a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on the east side of Otter Lake, 10 minutes from Kokum's. Not large, not fancy, but a second bedroom, a real bedroom, where Kokum Pearl could stay on dialysis weeks when the weather was bad. The drainage corridor project took 14 months. It ran east to west across the basin, 3 retention ponds, regraded channel sections, upgraded culverts, a monitoring system with sensors Rowan helped specify. When it was finished, the municipality held a small ceremony. The Reeve gave a speech. Harriet came, no cane now. She stood at the back. Rowan presented one section of the technical summary. She'd written most of it. She stood at the front of the community hall in a clean blazer she'd bought in Dauphin, and she talked about water saturation and flood modeling and channel capacity, and the room listened in the quiet way rooms listen when someone knows exactly what they're talking about. Durag Summers, sitting in the third row, looked at Harriet in the back. Harriet's expression didn't change, but she nodded. In the spring, Rowan Alcott finished her degree. University of Manitoba, Civil and Environmental Engineering. She did the final exams from a laptop at Kokum Pearl's kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg, on a Thursday afternoon in May. She'd written it on a post-it note 14 months ago. Just the word, May. There was no ceremony. She submitted the last assignment at 4:17 p.m., and then she sat at the table and didn't move for a while. Kokum Pearl brought her tea. They sat together. The freight trucks that ran the highway past the edge of town were audible in the distance, low and continuous, the sound of things in motion. "You done?" Kokum Pearl asked. "I'm done." Kokum Pearl set her tea down, folded her hands. "Your mother would have been very proud." Rowan didn't answer. She looked at the post-it note. She peeled it off the binder and set it on the table. Then she cried, not silently, not with clenched jaw, the real kind. The kind you earn after 14 months and 2 deferred semesters and 2 years of back cash register and a rainstorm on County Road 9 and your grandmother's hand flat on the table, not quite able to hold it all in. Kokum Pearl didn't say a word. She just stayed. On the 1-year anniversary of the flood, Otter Lake held a community gathering. Not for Rowan specifically. The municipality didn't know the full story, not yet. It was for the corridor project, which had prevented significant flooding during a heavy spring thaw that would have, by Durag Summers' estimate, taken out the eastern road section and 2 more farms. But Harriet came, and she asked to speak. She stood at the front of the community hall without notes. She was not the kind of person who needed notes. "I want to tell you about the night I went into a ditch on County Road 9, she said, "and the woman who pulled me out." The room didn't know yet. Rowan was in the third row. The woman beside her didn't know either. Harriet talked about that night plainly, without drama. The rain, the angle of the ditch, the water at the door, and then, quietly, methodically, the sound of footsteps on gravel. "What I want to say about Rowan Alcott," Harriet said, "is not that she saved my life, though she did. It's that when I was in that car, she looked at the situation and she already knew what to do. She'd been learning how things work, water, pressure, land, systems, for years. Without a grant, without a title, without anyone asking her to." She paused. "I didn't give her something she didn't already have. I just stopped blocking the door." The room was very quiet. Rowan looked at her hands. Kokum Pearl, 2 seats down, reached over and took her hand and held it. BWR Infrastructure Group announced the establishment of the Alcott Pearl Bursary for Indigenous students in engineering and environmental science. Annual, funded by BWR and personally by Harriet. Criterion, not grades, not test scores. One question: is this person already doing the work, in whatever way they can, with whatever they have? The first recipient was a 17-year-old in the Pass, Manitoba, who had been monitoring the water levels of a local lake on a hand-drawn chart every morning before school for 2 years because he thought something was wrong with the drainage upstream. He was right. He went to university the following September. There's something I keep coming back to when I think about Rowan's story. She didn't know who Harriet Beauclair Wren was, didn't know the company, the contracts, the projects spanning 4 provinces, didn't see a CEO in that tilted car. She saw a woman with her hands pressed flat against the glass, and she moved. That's the part that gets me. Because we live in a world that asks what's in this for me before it asks what does this person need. And Rowan never asked the first question. She just got her shoulder into the door. What I hope you carry away from this isn't just the ending, the bursary, the degree, the project. It's what Harriet said at the front of that hall. She didn't give Rowan anything she hadn't already built. The canal sketches were in the binder before the accident. The course was half finished before the accident. Kokum Pearl's hand flat on the table, holding everything in. That was before the accident, too. Harriet didn't rescue Rowan. She recognized her, and then she made space. So here's what I want you to sit with. You don't have to pull someone from a flood. But is there someone near you who is already doing the work? Quietly, without a title, with fraying cuffs and a post-it note and a plan called May? Who just needs someone to stop blocking the door? Drop a comment. Tell me about a time you showed up for someone without knowing why, or a time someone showed up for you. I read every single one, and these are the stories that remind me why I do this. If this one moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. And if you're not part of this community yet, subscribe. We're here every week, telling the stories that matter. Rowan Alcott drove home along County Road 9 that evening, windows down. The canal running clear and shallow, well within its banks, channeled now by infrastructure she had helped design. She turned onto the road east of town, pulled up to Kokum Pearl's bungalow, parked. Kokum was on the step, 2 cups of tea already poured. She handed one to Rowan without a word. They sat together in the blue October evening, the highway traffic audible in the distance. White trucks passing, moving north. Rowan looked up at the sky above the bungalow roof, and it didn't feel like a ceiling. It felt like something she already knew how to read.